What a bunch of idiots.
Us?
Have you ever said that? Have you ever said, what a bunch of idiots, when referring to them? Or maybe you've said, what a bunch of dopes. Or what a bunch of morons. Or maybe you weren't referring to a bunch. Maybe you singled out someone specific and said, that guy is an imbecile. Or what a jerk. What a jerk. What a jerk. Labels are important. You can't begin to treat a disease until you know what to call it. We expect doctors to know the difference between an elbow and a kidney. Why, this very society, whose motto is to question, is the answer. Really? Exactly. What? Right. Huh? Correct. I've got to sit here and think. Why, this very society, the First Coast Freethought Society, has spent many hours at meetings like this one discussing what it means to be an atheist. What it means to be an agnostic, a bright, a believer, a non-believer, an agnoptimist. Labels should have meaning. We need to know whether what is in that jar in Grandma's home kitchen is home-canned green beans or rat poison. Why, there's even a distinction between a moron, an imbecile, and an idiot. We don't use these terms anymore, except to use them in the derogatory, pejorative sense. We used to classify a person as a moron if the person was of borderline intelligence, having an IQ between 50 and 70. An imbecile was someone with an IQ between 35 and 50. And an idiot was someone with severe mental retardation and an IQ below 35. We no longer say mental retardation. We say intellectual disability. Did you hear that the Supreme Court ruled 8-1 earlier this month that the American people are unfit to govern? According to Justice David Souter, this decision is now, I quote, a response to the clear and demonstrable incompetence and indifference of the United States citizenry in matters concerning the operation of this nation's government. As a result of the ruling, the American people will no longer retain the power to choose their own federal, state, and local officials or vote on matters of concern to the public, unquote. What I am really saying is that we as a society have failed to effectively teach our children what it means to be an American, what it means to have a Constitution and a Bill of Rights, what it means to have due process of law, and what it means to live in a representative democracy. That over the past several decades, we have dumbed down our understanding of what it means to be an American, throwing our hands in the air and labeling people idiots, imbeciles, jerks, and morons is a cop-out. Being pejorative, belittling, negative, disparaging is ugly. It's really an offensive admission of our own failure to persuade people to our own point of view, although it may be a bit fun. And it's done a lot more than we may care to admit. Never interfere with an idiot while they are proving themselves. Green Day, a very popular American group, made lots and lots of money, millions, with a rock opera called American Idiot. We have these kinds of things happening in our streets all the time, flipping a fellow traveler off with the bird. And then there's the liberal idiot. Sure, communism killed 100 million people last century, but that's just because the United States never gave it a chance to succeed. And there's this fellow who's quoted as saying, this is no different than what happens at the Skull and Bones initiation. You ever heard of a need to blow off some steam? That's Rush Limbaugh, referring to what happened at Abu Ghraib. Rush Limbaugh has no detractors of people calling him an idiot. This man, Al Franken, made lots and lots of money calling Rush Limbaugh an idiot. This is his #1 New York Times bestseller called Rush Limbaugh is a Big Fat Idiot. Al Franken has no shortage of his detractors. Who is this man? Norman Coleman. And right now, there's a little thing going on in Minnesota. He's appealing that decision. We haven't seated that Senate seat yet. But Norm Coleman isn't a particular fan of Al Franken. Okay? We're making lots of money in the idiot business. There's these books, The Complete Idiot's Guide for Dummies. And then there's The Complete Idiot's Guide to Complete Fucking Idiots. What happens with us? We have this need to believe and belong, and we want to associate with people that seem to have our own mindset, our set of values. Well, if they're all doing it, maybe I'll jump off the same cliff. An idiot is a genius to another idiot? A lot of people had a lot of fun calling our previous president an idiot, but was he really an idiot? The Daily Mirror thought so in England. This is a front page of their periodic, their newspaper. How can 59 million people be so dumb to vote for him on a second term? There's a lot of passion in using the word idiot and talking people down. Here's an individual, unnamed, but he's apologizing. This is one of the 55 million Americans that voted against Bush and would like to apologize for the 59 million idiots that did. You all know who she is. She's quoted as, she's a provocateur, and Coulter, my only regret with Timothy McVeigh, you all know Timothy McVeigh, I'm sure, is that he did not go to the New York Times building. Here she is with her friend Sean Hannity holding up her book called Treason, labeling anybody who is of a liberal bent someone who should be charged with treason in that book. And then there's people who try to help us cope with idiots. How to cope when you are surrounded by idiots. This person hopes that one day that each idiot will be a harmless idiot. Speaking of idiots, what is an activist judge? Is an activist judge an idiot, or is the person pointing the finger and using the label activist judge an idiot, or neither, or both? Activist judges are not always easy to identify. Judge Judy, is she an activist judge? Those who bandy about the label activist judge typically define activist judges as those judges who rule according to their own personal biases rather than a close reading of the law. Those who overrule the will of the people. One of the more stunning decisions that polarized America, where judges were charged with social engineering, is the Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954. A decision declaring segregation unconstitutional was an opinion that was assailed in its day as undemocratic intrusion by judges into states' powers. And there were a lot of people that were very upset about that decision. Who is this man? This man is Judge Greer. Pinellas County Circuit Court Judge George Greer. He is the Florida jurist who originally ruled that the brain-damaged Terry Schiavo, who had been in a persistent vegetative state for 10 years, had no hope for recovery, and that her feeding tube could be removed. His ruling went against the wishes of her parents. A majority of the House and Senate members got involved, Congress got involved, and a boatload of dedicated right-to-life activists. Judge Greer is a conservative, a Baptist, a Republican, a mild-mannered man who shuns the limelight. He was in the sights of sometimes a violent movement whose most ardent followers have advocated and on occasion carried out murder of their opponents, including abortion providers.